Hi, in this lecture we will learn the nested tables. Since you already learned the v-arrays, now you are familiar with the nested tables, so it will be easier to understand that. Now let's start with the similarities and the differences of nested tables than the v-arrays. They both have key value pairs as they are both collections. The keys can have only numbers and subtypes like binary integers or PLS integers. But note that these two subtypes need less storage and faster than the number types, especially when you deal with the arithmetic operations. The keys can be only positive numbers, negative numbers are invalid. They both can have 2 GB of values. These types can both be used as schema level types, so we can use them in a table like a column. We will see that in next lessons. Unlike v-arrays, we can delete a value from the nested tables after the initialization. We know that once we added our values, we cannot delete them from a v-array. But in nested tables, we can. We can delete any value from our nested tables by using their index values. Unlike v-arrays, nested tables are not stored consecutively in the database. There can be any data in your disk between its values. Not so important info, but I explained anyway since you may wonder. But anyway, when you selected the values of a nested table, the keys will be returned in order starting from 1 even if you delete some rows from it. Unlike v-arrays, nested tables are unbounded. That means you don't specify its maximum size. If you add a new value, the size increases dynamically. It's a good thing. Actually, nested table seems pretty much like the v-arrays, but it is unbounded and there is a little difference on its create code. This is how we can create a nested table. We simply write type, our type name, and as a new keyword, we write as table of, and our data type, and optionally not null to say that you cannot insert a null value inside of our value area. Besides, we can also create that type in the database as schema level type. We do that with create or replace command like we saw in the v-arrays lesson. Now, let's make some examples and see how we create and use a nested table. Let's start with the easy one and go further. Declare. First, let's declare our nested table type. Type e_list is table of varchar 2. As we can see, we use table keyword instead of the v-array keyword. That's the only difference. The rest is the same. So let's create our nested table variable. Amps e_list and our begin keyword. Now, like we did in our v-array lesson, we can initialize our nested table manually. Let's do that. Amps is equal to e_list and the values are Alex, let's say Bruce, and John. Now, let's print our values. For I in one amps.count loop dbms output.putLine amps and the index is I and loop and end. Great. Now let's run it. As we can see, no problem. But if I would do like that, why should I use nested tables instead of v-arrays? So what if we need to add a new value to our collection then? We cannot do that in v-arrays, but we can do that in nested tables. So let's add a new value and see if it works. Amps index is 4 is equal to Bob. So what do you think? Will it work? Let's try that. Let's clear up and run our code. As we can see, we had an error. Subscript beyond the account. Like we had in our v-array examples. But we said that our nested tables are unbounded. So why did this happen? Yes, our nested tables are unbounded, but you need to allocate a new space for the new value. You need to extend your nested table before adding a new value. So let's write our extend method. amps.extend. Now let's run it again. As we can see, no problem. What if we write 2 instead of 4? Let's make the change and run it again. No problem. But this time we updated the second indexed value. So we saw Bob instead of Bruce. Now let's change our code and get the values from the database. elist is equal to e_list. This is the constructor method, and idx, let's say pls integer, it's equal to 1. Now let's delete here and write for x in 100.110 loop, and after the extend I write select first name into amps. The ID is idx from employees table, where employee ID is equal to x. Now I need to increase the idx is equal to idx plus 1 and end loop. Now I need to delete here. Okay, now let's run it again. Pretty good. Just like we did in vararrays. The only difference is its type declaration. Now let me show you something else. We said that the value type of our type is varchar2, but we may not know the exact size or exact type of our first name, or it may change in time. So we may want to use person type attribute. We can use person type attribute in all composite data types. I mean, we can use it in vararrays, nested tables, and associative arrays. So let's see it in nested tables now. Is table of employees dot first name person type. Great. Now we don't need to care about the data type of our value. So let's run it again. As we can see, it works without any problem. Now, to see the order, let's check the employees table. Now I open up a new connection, then right click on the connection and hit new document tab group. As we can see, we separated our worksheet in 2 windows, so we can compare them easier. Now let's query. Select all the columns from employees. As we can see, the names are in the same order. Now, I will show you the last thing about nested tables for now. It is deleting a row from a nested table. Let's now delete a row in our example. Let's close here and write amps.delete, let's say the index 3. The index 3 is lex. Let's clear up here and run it again. As we can see, we had an error, no data found, because we deleted the third element of our nested table but tried to reach it anyway. This is a problem. We use associative arrays instead of nested tables because of that, because there is no such a problem in associative arrays. But why we use nested tables then? Because we cannot store associative arrays in our tables, but we can store nested tables. So how can I handle this? We can handle this with using the exists function. So let's do that. I write if amps.exists the index of I, then dbms output and our endif. Now let's run it again. I think I forgot to take this semicolon, so I simply click on anywhere and click on Run button. As we can see, we handled that problem. To see that better, I clear up here again and run again. Alright, we saw that nested tables are pretty same with the V-arrays. The difference is nested tables are unbounded, so we don't specify the maximum size. Actually, we can store nested tables and V-arrays in our tables, but I will show you how to do that in our next lessons. I think this is enough for the nested tables. I will mostly focus on the associative arrays since we will generally use that in our programs. So this is the end of nested tables lesson. See you in the next lectures.